Let's wade into this topic a little bit deeper tonight, really talk this through. I'm joined with our panel, attorney Angela Reddock Wright, and also 1619 collaborator and litigation expert Sunny Slaughter. Angela, we'll start with you. Many people felt Senator Cruz's focus on critical race theory was out of line. We know CRT is a legal framework. Judge Jackson might and probably will be a Supreme Court justice for life. Was there a legitimate reason to ask about this?
Well, I think it certainly was out of line because we haven't seen any other nominee be asked such questions. And as Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson so wonderfully stated, that critical race theory is not really something that comes into play as a Supreme Court justice. Supreme Court justices are held to a standard of what we call stare decisis, which means they look to precedent, they look at history in order to make their decisions. So to focus in specifically on this real hot button political issue for a Supreme Court nominee probably went too far. But of course, we have seen, it doesn't mean that race does not come into play for Supreme Court justices, because we've seen a number of cases in history where race discrimination in the history of race in this country has been at the center, from the Dred Scott case to Plessy versus Ferguson to Brown versus the Board of Education. All of those raise questions about the history of race in this country. So to the extent critical race theory helps to get to those issues, then it's an appropriate discussion. But the context and how we have traditionally seen Supreme Court nominations go and confirmation hearings go, it was out of scope.
Okay, Sonny, I'll ask you. Judge Jackson has expressed admiration for Derek Bell. He's the godfather of CRT. She's spoken publicly about white privilege, intersectionality, which do have roots in CRT, many people say. Senator Cruz followed up on yesterday's discussion with a quote where Judge Jackson talked about CRT being part of the sentencing process in the judicial system. Given the illusions and given concerns about would this be guiding her decisions, do you think this was a legitimate line of questioning?
Thank you for having me. I do not think that Senator Cruz operated in a manner with his questioning that was very legitimate in what he was asking, because, you know, when you think about what Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson has to evaluate, she was very clear about understanding the law. And because of her time on the Sentencing Commission, she understands very importantly how racism, policy, and practice play against one another, how it impacts persons of color differently than those who are not identified as Black, Latinx, and Native American and other. And she recognizes how her decisions as a judge are impacted by race, but she doesn't necessarily take those factors into consideration when she is sentencing, because she is following the guidelines as established by Congress. She was crystal clear. What Senator Cruz was trying to do was really take her down a rabbit hole of the political spectrum that is not necessary or not needed in the context for her judicial nomination, nor for her time serving as a Supreme Court justice.
Angela, I'll ask you this. Did Republicans maybe stretch a bit? I think I might know what you're going to say. Listen to this. This was between Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson and Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee.
You told Senator Cruz that as a board member of the Georgetown Day School, you didn't have any control over what was taught at the school, no control over curriculum, and you weren't aware that the school was pushing CRT. But I would think that there would have been parents that came to you and said, have you seen these books? Are you aware that this is being taught, being on that school board?
No, Senator.
No one ever mentioned it.
Georgetown Day School is a private school. It's
right.
It is a private school, Angela, and private schools, they can teach what they want, whether it's about abortion, that it's wrong, you know, or marriage, that it's between a man or woman or what have you, or race. They can say CRT is the best idea in the whole wide world. Did this go out of bounds a bit?
Well, it was definitely a stretch. I mean, when you are doing a confirmation for someone to the United States Supreme Court, the highest court in the country, it should really be about their legal background, their decisions, about their judicial perspectives. So to try to make a connection to the judge's service on an independent school board, I definitely think was a stretch. But that said, it's interesting you would ask me that question because I actually served on my high school's board for several years, which is an independent school. Had the pleasure of being able to go from Compton, California to an independent school every day in order to have an opportunity at a different type of education. And I can attest to what Judge Jackson said, that as a board member, you have broad overview for what happens at the school. You are a governing body. You do not determine the curriculum. You do not determine the day-to-day activities. So the school, headed by whoever the head of school is, probably has its own, faculty and staff, administrators that are involved in setting the curriculum for that school. Can parents weigh in? Of course, but is it ultimately a decision of the board as to what's taught or not taught? No, it's not. The board entrusts that with the head of school and with the faculty and the administration that it hires. So this definitely seemed to be a real stretch.
Sonny, I'll end with you. Several supporters felt that this was offensive. Many people felt this was racist. She is a judge. She has to be asked tough questions in order to get for a lifetime appointment on the highest bench in the land, especially on philosophy and if it's unclear. But still, many supporters said this felt wrong to them. What did you make of this?
I think that it was very intentional. And I do think that it was disturbing, to say the least, because they did not talk about CRT or ask the questions of any of the other recent justices in history, and CRT is not new. The academic version of CRT. I think she was really baited and targeted for a time in which women, and specifically Black women, are constantly having to prove their credentials, their character, their responses must be muted often from that which their heart speaks. We cannot continue to say that this is okay. And it's not okay. She is one of, if not the most credentially qualified justice nominee ever, at least in my 53 years. And it was a disgrace, not only to those who were asking, but to the American people, to have to hear things that were not relevant to why she is being nominated to serve on the highest court in this land for a lifetime. But we shall not be moved, not today or tomorrow.
Angela Reddock Wright, Sonny Slaughter, on an issue that has stirred a lot of passions in our land over the last few years. I appreciate the really frank, honest conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.